Thinking Aloud. Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffrey Mishlove.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jeffrey Mishlove. Our topic today is the soul, and with me is Gary Zukav, author of The Dancing Woolly Masters, which won the American Book Award for Science in 1979, and more recently, The Seat of the Soul. Welcome, Gary.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
It's a pleasure to be with you. You know, as a well-known science writer, now turning your attention to such a topic as the human soul, which has been discarded by scientists, you must have felt quite a challenge in trying to make this a legitimate, even an important topic for inquiry.
Well, I didn't write this as a science writer. We're speaking now about the seat of the soul. And my objective was not to make the soul legitimate in terms of science. The soul is legitimate, period. It doesn't need validation. At least that was my perception. And so I wrote The Seat of the Soul to share the things that were most important to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I noticed that one of the most important arguments that you make right in the beginning is that we need to think about the soul in terms of evolution, that the scientific view of evolution doesn't capture the whole thrust that's available to us when we look at it from the larger perspective.
Well, the scientific view doesn't capture anything of the soul. Mm-hmm. In fact, the scientific view excludes the soul. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you, though, it was a stretch on my part to write The Seat of the Soul after having written The Dancing Woolly Masters, because the two are significantly different, and yet in one way they are closely related. The Dancing Woolly Masters, which was subtitled An Overview of the New Physics, is a book that was designed to open the mind. And The Seat of the Soul is a book that is designed to open the heart.
Yeah.
And this is often the sequence that many people encounter as they move into an expanded awareness of who they are and why they are here.
Mm-hmm. You make the distinction between five-sensory reality and multi-sensory reality as being important for understanding the soul.
Yes, that's right. And these are terms that seem appropriate to me. Everything that I shared in The Seat of the Soul, and everything that I share with you now, Jeffrey, and everything that I will share with the listeners who are watching us and the readers who will read The Seat of the Soul, I share not as a dogma or as a truth that I feel you must believe or anyone who hears our words must believe, but only as a window through which I've come to view life. It's been helpful to me, and I hope that it will be helpful to you and to our listeners. So if you hear anything that I say, then I invite you to take it and use it as your own, if you resonate with it, because that's what will make it your own. And if you don't, then throw it away. Don't try to wear a shoe that pinches.
Well, you almost have to make a statement like that, because what you're saying and what you said earlier is that there's no scientific way to validate the kinds of things that you say about the soul.
There is no scientific way to validate anything that I or you can say about the soul, because the soul does not... Science cannot validate the existence of the soul any more than it can prove the existence of God. It cannot. We're talking now about non-physical reality, non-physical dimensions of experience, existence, purpose, and effort. And these are things that science does not grasp. Now, this is not a shortcoming of science because, let me put it this way, our species has been evolving since its origin through the exploration of physical reality. This has been our evolutionary modality. And we have been confined to the five senses.
Mm-hmm.
Now, exploration of physical reality through the five senses is the same thing as acquiring the ability to manipulate and control those things that appear to be external to us. It's the same thing as the pursuit of the power to manipulate and to control.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is external power.
Yeah.
So our evolution, until very recently, has been as five-sensory humans, evolving through the exploration of physical reality. That's the same thing as the pursuit of external power. Now we have crossed a threshold. We are in new territory, brand new domain. We are now becoming multisensory. That means we are no longer confined to the five senses. Now, I use these terms because the five senses together form a single sensory system, and the object of that sensory system is physical reality. That's what it's designed to detect.
Yes.
As we become multisensory, we move beyond the limitations of the five senses. And we now are evolving through a different mechanism than the exploration of physical reality. We are evolving through responsible choice with the assistance and guidance of non-physical guides and teachers.
That's a very profound statement, and one of the handles that I get on it is the idea that something is happening right now in our age that's of significance here. It's not as if, I mean, one might say, well, we've always had access to these multi-sensory modalities, but something's happening now.
Indeed it is,
Mm-hmm.
as we speak. At this very moment and for all of the moments to come, it is happening now.
Mm-hmm.
We are in the most significant evolutionary transition our species has ever encountered.
Mm-hmm.
There is no way to compare what we are now experiencing with anything in our past.
Yeah.
This new event has no historical antecedent. The only event in the history of our species that compares with this one is Genesis.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a new kind of Genesis. The genesis of our species into conscious awareness and participation in a larger fabric of life, in non-physical reality.
Mm-hmm. In other words, if we look at evolution, we're beginning to understand ourselves in terms of our spiritual evolution and not just our ability to have dominion over the other kingdoms of nature.
Exactly. Exactly. We have always been involved in spiritual evolution. We are spiritual beings. We have always been spiritual beings, and we will always be spiritual beings. The difference is that now we are becoming aware of ourselves as spiritual beings, and that is making all the difference.
How do you define the soul, and how does it relate to this idea of ourselves as spiritual beings?
The soul of an individual, your soul, and my soul, is that part of us that is immortal.
Mm-hmm.
Your personality is that part of you that was born into time, that matures in time, or at least grows older in time, and then decays and passes away.
Like my body.
Like your body, your personality, your body, your intuitional structure.
Mm-hmm.
These are all tools, energy tools of the soul.
Mm-hmm.
Your soul existed before your personality came into being. It will exist after your personality came into being. All of the learning, all of the activities in which you are involved as a being, as Jeffrey Mishlove, go into the evolution of your soul. It is your soul that is learning. It is your soul that is growing. It is your soul that is moving ever closer toward perfection, if we can use that word.
Mm-hmm. The sense that I get is that the soul is
But
like a
it's not-
spark of the divine.
But it's not as though perfection doesn't already exist.
Mm.
We live in a perfect universe.
Yeah.
We live in a perfect universe of life. And what is so magnificent is that we are beginning to see that as multisensory humans. Now, I do not mean now that all 5 billion of us on this planet are going to be multisensory before the end of this century. It may take several generations, but not as long as you might think. This is a momentous undertaking that our species has entered, and it is affecting everything without exception.
By multisensory, you're really referring to like inner vision, it would seem to me, a perception of the world of the spirit within us.
Yes, and without us. There is no aspect of the world that is not the world of spirit. This is not a material world that we are living in. It is a spiritual world.
How have you come to be convinced of that?
With much difficulty, slowly, and then with increasing acceleration and pleasure.
Yeah.
I have come to see these things in the course of my experience. And it's my joy and my pleasure and my fulfillment to share them.
Now you talk about and write about spiritual guides and spiritual helpers as a normal part of the soul's evolution and the evolution of the personality as well.
Yes, yes. Everyone has guides and teachers, non-physical guides and non-physical teachers. Now, a guide is not the same as a teacher. A guide is what you might call a consultant that's called in on a project basis. For example, if you say you want to, as you have, create a television series with a certain quality about it of integrity, intellectual acuity, and spiritual depth, you will draw to yourself, as you have, guides that can provide you with just this assistance. Now, teachers are more impersonal. Or well, actually, in their relation to us, they appear to be more personal. They appear to be such that we can give them names or speak to them as though they were other personalities. In fact, they are impersonal energy dynamics. A non-physical teacher is like a friend that knows you very well, knows the deepest parts of you, knows all of your struggles, knows all of your aspirations, knows all of the things that you are ashamed of and are working on, and strives only for your best interest, strives only for the ever-increasing alignment of your personality with your soul. Having a non-physical teacher and being able to be in conscious communication with this teacher is like being in contact with all of this and at the same time a consummate psychotherapist.
One who really knows you intimately, and you didn't use the term, but I think what you're saying is this is a being who loves you unconditionally.
Yes, yes, that's so. Now, while we're on the matter of teachers, let's clarify some things that are important here. A teacher does not make decisions for you. As you decide to move into a relationship consciously with a non-physical teacher, it's not a matter of giving yourself mindlessly over to the control of another.
Right.
A non-physical teacher would not and could not make your decisions for you, because no one can assume responsibility for how you choose to use your energy. But a non-physical teacher can help you to see the symbolism of everything that happens in your life at each moment. A non-physical teacher can help you to see at each point of decision, which means at every moment, what probable future will unfold if you take this course of action, or that course of action, or that course of action, so that you can see for yourself if these different courses of action, if each of these different courses of action will produce consequences for which you are willing to assume responsibility. And if you find a course of action that will produce consequences for which you are not willing to assume responsibility, then don't choose it. And if you find a course of action, and you will, that will produce consequences, that will produce a probable future for which you are willing to take responsibility, then move in that direction if that's your choice. That's responsible choice.
Now, how would you distinguish between this kind of contact with a non-physical teacher and on the other hand, just having a very highly developed sense of intuition?
They are identical. Your intuition is the voice of the non-physical world. So to the five-sensory personality, intuition is it's trivial. In fact, psychology doesn't even recognize it. Psychology is the study of perception, affect, and cognition. In other words, it's the study of the personality, even though the word means study of the soul.
Yeah, in fact, today it's even more limited than that. It's mostly thought of as the study of behavior.
Yes, in many schools of psychology it is.
Yeah. Not to say that this isn't changing, that there's a new movement within psychology, transpersonal psychology for one, which takes these concepts that you're discussing very, very seriously and thinks that they need to have a central place.
I'm glad to hear that. And more this will be the case. We will develop, as we become multisensory, a spiritual psychology, a true psychology, and we can call it spiritual psychology in this transitional period to distinguish it from conventional psychology. A multisensory human is keenly interested in his or her intuition, because his or her intuition is the way that he or she can access experience that is, and wisdom that is more comprehensive than that of the personality. So the development of intuition will be central to spiritual psychology and is important to the multisensory human. Now, there are some ways that this can happen. For example, just as we now have developed many ways to develop cognition, which means to think things through, we will now develop ways to develop intuition, which means to ask questions and get answers.
Ask and ye shall receive.
Always you receive. No prayer is unanswered. Every question is answered. So while we are speaking about intuition, may I explain some things that may be helpful?
Yes.
Your intuition is like a radio station. No, it's like a radio receiver, and it can receive different stations. Now, this radio receiver serves different functions. It serves your spirituality, which is the development of your soul. It serves your physical survival. For example, hunches about when to fix the brakes and what street not to walk down. All help to keep you in physical form. It serves your creativity. Hunches about which guests to invite, which book to buy, which conference to go to. When you use your intuition, you can tune in to one of the radio stations that you can tune into is your own soul. This happens through the higher self experience. Personality soul communication is the higher self experience.
The higher self, in effect, mediates between the personality and the soul.
Yes, but it doesn't exist without the communication between personality and soul. It is the personality-soul communication. It is...
Sounds like one of those elusive particles in quantum physics or something.
Not as elusive as that. You can look at your higher self as being the template of the fully empowered personality, of an authentically empowered personality. When a personality is completely aligned with its soul, it is authentically empowered. And this is how our species is evolving now, by the way, not in the pursuit of external power, but in the pursuit of authentic power.
And when a personality is not aligned with its soul, what do we see there?
Look around you. Look at me. Look at everyone that you see in the world. We are all here to learn just this. A personality is a complex, is complex. It is comprised of many parts. And each of these parts has its own volition. So, for example, there's a part of you that suffers with the homeless, and a part of you that wants a larger house.
Right.
There's a part of you that wants to feed the hungry, and a part of you that wants a second VCR. And when you satisfy one part of you, you dissatisfy another, and you are torn. This is the experience of the splintered personality. So, as you look at us, any of us, you can see in our personalities both those parts of the soul that need healing and those parts of the soul that the soul has given to the individual in this incarnation, and the grace that that soul has earned. And these are the loving and the giving.
Well, is alignment with the soul in this sense, does it mean that we'll always make the saintly choice? That we would never do something to enhance our own physical possessions at the expense of others?
And, if you are fully aligned with your soul, it will be your pleasure, your joy, to always move toward cooperation, toward sharing, toward reverence for life. And you will not be torn.
Not a splintered personality.
Not a splintered personality.
It won't be a painful decision.
No, it will not be a painful decision. Now, how do you get from a splintered personality to an authentically empowered personality? This is through responsible choice. In my experience, this is difficult work.
Yeah. And the key is responsible choice.
That is the mechanism. But no matter what you choose, when you are confronted with a decision, it is not possible to make a bad decision. The universe does not judge you. There is only cause and effect. You make a decision, you create consequences. You experience those consequences, and therefore you learn to create responsibly.
So, and this is what you meant, I think, earlier when you said that the world is truly a perfect world in spite of the suffering.
That's right. In every moment, in every way, the universe is serving the needs of your soul. These are not necessarily the same as the wants of your personality.
Yeah. So, the process of alignment is based upon your choice. And in making these responsible choices, we have the assistance of guides and teachers.
That's right.
And yet, it still is always up to us.
That's right.
You know, there's quite an enormous movement today to talk about letting go and letting God, to realize that we are, for example, helpless over our addictions and over our personality mechanisms, you know, to view the human being as something of a machine even. You're suggesting something different than that, I think.
Yes, I am. I am suggesting that with each of the choices that we make, we create consequences, and we ourselves experience those consequences. If you harm another soul, if you cause pain or trauma in another soul, you yourself will experience that trauma.
That's karma.
Yes, that is karma. In the West, we call it the Golden Rule. The Golden Rule is not a moral dictum. It is loving guidance about how to live and how to create in a world that is governed by the universal law of cause and effect.
As you sow, so shall you reap.
Exactly. So, if you harm another person, you will learn from that experience, and they will learn from that experience. By your choice, you will have created pain or suffering in another person. So why not choose to create differently.
Yeah.
Because as you create for this other person, you create also for yourself.
But I have the sense, Gary, that you're not just talking about the golden rule and ethical systems that have been with us for thousands of years. You're talking about spiritual development in a new way.
Yes, a very new way. Well, the new part about it is that our entire species, all 5 billion of us, are becoming multi-sensory. The human species is no longer evolving through the exploration of physical reality, through the pursuit of external power, the ability to manipulate and control. We are now evolving through responsible choice with the assistance and guidance of non-physical guides and teachers. We are seeking not external power, but authentic power. And that means the alignment of the personality with the soul. Now, you don't have to be a metaphysical person to understand this.
Yeah.
You can look at it behaviorally. Your soul is that part of you that always strives toward harmony, toward cooperation, toward sharing, toward reverence for life. And as you choose in each moment to align yourself with harmony, or at least not to create more disharmony in the situation you're in, then you are consciously choosing to align yourself with your soul. You are consciously moving toward authentic power. So, for example, when you're on the freeway and you are late for an appointment, and someone cuts right in front of you, and they drive 45 miles an hour, you can't pass them, and you feel anger rise up inside of you. Now, the question becomes, what shall you do with this anger?